And here we are live, Joe Rayo and Joe Chaffee at 12 at the ungodly hour of 12:30 in the afternoon. It's a good thing, It's a good thing both woke up at the crack of noon to be able to do this show. Uh,
Well, it's a little off our normal schedule here, but we're here because we've got some possibly exciting weather coming this way in the next few hours, and we're tracking it, and we want everybody to know where it's going.
well, a couple of things just to put front and center. There are no severe thunderstorm watches out. I would be really surprised if they put one up, only because of the fact that the nature of this is so quick that it really almost, I don't know, unless they wind up putting it up further to the east. I doubt it. I think we all know pretty well that we've got a cold front coming through, and we'll just have to wait to see how the radar develops. And the main development on the radar is going to come uh, short. Shortly. The pieces are there right now, but if you think, as far as a big line of storms are concerned on the radar right at this very second at 12:31 Eastern time, not quite there yet. And I'll
No,
bring up the radar, Joe, so you can go ahead and pontificate on it. I'm going to just take care of something really fast. Let me get the radar image up here for you.
well, you're absolutely right. There are no watches in effect, even no mesoscale discussions that have alluded to the possibility that there might be a watch coming our way in the coming hours, because we're still just sitting here. We have this initial wave of moisture, which I'm assume it has something to do with the warm front, the lead frontal zone out ahead of the sharp cold front that we've been talking about for the past few days, that is touched off all of this wet weather. Now, we mentioned yesterday, Joe, that sometimes when you have something like this, an initial shot of moisture, an initial shot of showery weather, that kind of takes away from the in terms of energy, the what we've all been waiting for, that main line of showery and thundery weather, that main line of convection. So that may actually sap the energy for a little bit of a little bit of the frontal line. But on the other hand, as we've been talking about for days now, this thing is moving so very rapidly. It has so much support in the upper levels of the atmosphere that literally, very quickly, we could see some convection just blow up within a matter of an hour or two. And right now, the line that we've been waiting for, it looks like, at least from what I was checking out the GOES 16 satellite loops a few moments ago, it looks like we're just now beginning to see the beginnings of some of that convective activity beginning to pop over in east central Pennsylvania. And over the next couple of hours, it should become more evident and uh, solidify into a more concentrated, albeit rather narrow line of showers and storms, which eventually is going to make its way through our area. And I've been telling everybody 2 to 4 o'clock here in the immediate tri-state area. That seems to be the time frame for potential active weather in terms of showers and storms and hail and gusty winds and
And, and
uh,
those winds and hail are the primary drivers here. This is not it's not a situation that would normally produce a tornado. The atmosphere actually is lacking tropical moisture, which is
right.
something you like to see. You want to see when you try to consider whether there's going to be funnel clouds and rotation, and you don't have that part. This is a cold trough that's driving all of this.
Right. It's more or less a. I mean, if you're concerned about winds, this is more like a microburst or heavy downdraft type of scenario, not a tornadic type of situation. Because as you just mentioned, we don't have the very warm and muggy air in place to set the stage for that. And actually, the CAPE, the CAPE values, which you would normally, if you see them in like 1 or 2,000, you say, oh my goodness. And this cold front coming in, that certainly could trigger an outbreak of tornadic activity or supercells. We don't have the CAPE. What we have, the only thing that we have working for us, if you're looking for possible severe weather, is again that incredibly cold and unstable pool of air associated with this upper level trough rapidly swinging in from the north and west. And again, also, as I mentioned the last couple of days, the sheer rapidity of the sheer rapid movement of this cold front, the forward motion, 50 miles per hour as it streaks across New York State and Pennsylvania. That's going to help. If you can imagine, like a snowplow after a big blizzard, somehow managing to move at like 50 miles an hour, pushing all that snow up. Well, that's exactly what this cold
Right.
front is going to try to do. Is going to try to lift that air out ahead of the front, such a rapid way that we begin to see almost, I won't say instantaneous, but exceedingly rapid development of convective activity over the next 2 or 3 hours.
I have from SPC. I just put it up on the screen. This is showing their 500 millibar wind profile here. So we're looking up at about 18,000 feet, and this is a level which is very important. When we show our quote unquote jet stream maps, this is the level that we're looking at. And what really stands out here to me is the sheer depth of this trough. This is a very very cold, very strong upper trough, and you can see in the yellow and in the brown. These are the strongest winds coming down out of the jet stream at that level. You have some 80 and 90 knot plus winds. In this jet streak that is driving southeastward and moving, swinging through Pennsylvania and then exiting when it moves off the New Jersey coast. This is driving the development of what will probably be a relatively narrow line of storms. And as you said, Joe, they're moving at a rocket ship speed because the trough is swinging through very quickly, and the sheer forward motion is also going to add to some of these stronger wind gusts. So you might look at this, if this were an ordinary cold front, and you'd say, well, the winds might gust to 30 or 40 miles an hour, but then you could probably in some of these cells add an extra 10 or 20 miles an hour or more on top of that in terms of the wind gusts. And if you get a few the SBC was talking about in their discussion for some scattered or isolated to scattered strong cells embedded in a line that's moving on through. Someone's going to wind up with a very, very strong, very fast line of storms going by with those gusty winds. And you can see how the trough just kind of swings to the coast between now and midnight tonight. It just flies from when we started out this morning when it was sitting near Sault Ste. Marie and Lake Huron, and then the axis of the trough is moving offshore late this evening. So obviously the thunderstorms are going to be well ahead of the trough axis that moving on through. But I just want to emphasize that the sheer depth of this upper feature is very, very impressive.
And you talk about the speed, Joe, and when you were just talking a few moments ago, it triggered a memory of mine, a baseball, believe it or not, related memory. I remember watching a Met game. This goes back many, many years. This is back when Ralph Lindsay and Bob were doing the broadcast for the Mets. I guess it was sometime in the late '60s or early '70s. Possibly something that we're looking at right now, a very similar type of scenario. The Mets are playing a ball game. All of a sudden, the sky gets dark. Johnny McCarthy, the head groundskeeper, they stop the game. They run out. They start putting the tarp on the field. The rain is suddenly coming down really hard as they're struggling to get the tarp on. And all of a sudden, when they're all settled in and the tarp is on, the rain just instantly almost stopped like that. And all of a sudden, blue sky out in the outfield or beyond the outfield, the sun breaking through. And like Lindsey Nelson said, hey, fellas, it's all over. You got to take the tarp off. It was that quick. And this is the kind of setup that we're looking at in the next couple of hours. We're looking at, again, a very rapid line of possibly hard-hitting showers, but hard-hitting in the sense that they're only going to last for maybe 5 minutes or so, some cracks of thunder, and then just as quickly, it's out, we're done, and the skies are clearing, and we get into a dry weather pattern. That's, I think, what we're looking at in the next 2, 3, 4 hours here.
SPC just actually put up a mesoscale discussion.
Okay.
And I want to just, by the way, I'm going to pull it up off screen here. I'm going to read it real quick in terms of what they say. But I just want to give a thank you to the person who gave me I have to really I got to remember to write this stuff down. So, uh, whoever it was on the chat board that put up that SPC just put up uh, uh, the
Yep.
discussion.
Yeah.
Uh, Thank you, Jonathan Zeka said they said that there's a watch possible, so they may throw up a watch, but we already know that's coming. Timothy Veltman. Oh, here, Jonathan Zika putting up the mesoscale discussion. Thank you very much. So here it is. They're outlining an area, Joe, on the mesoscale discussion on the map. It looks like from New York City southwestward to south and west of Washington D.C. So I'm guess that's their prime area. So I'm gonna read the discussion now. Sorry, I'm not. Sorry if I'm going a little bit slow. I was just trying to wait for these maps to sort of pop up here and doing things on the fly. They said the threat for isolated damaging winds may undergo some increase by early to mid-afternoon over the mid-Atlantic region. Trends will continue to be monitored for possible development for a possible weather watch. Band of low-top convection currently extends from eastern PA southwest into West Virginia, moving east at 45. Activity is developing along a cold front and is associated with deeper ascent, attending a progressive shortwave trough. We're going to put this in English for you, folks, we promise. The downstream warm sector is only weakly unstable due to widespread prefrontal rain and clouds. Now that goes to what we said yesterday, and what you said earlier, Joe. That sometimes you get these prefrontal areas of precip. Oftentimes we see it ahead of a warm front that can sometimes take the zap out of the atmosphere. So when the cold front comes through, it doesn't have much to work with. And this is something that SPC is pointing out. That the warm sector is only weakly unstable due to widespread prefrontal rain and clouds. The relatively narrow corridor of partial clearing is occurring just ahead of the cold front. So you're getting a little slight dry slot in between. The tendency has been for dew points to mix down to the 30s. That's pretty low due to a relatively shallow moist layer you're looking at the Dulles sounding. Dulles from just north and west of Washington, D.C. The Wallops sounding indicated a somewhat deeper near-surface moist layer. As temperatures rise into the low and mid-60s and the low to mid-40 surface dew points can be maintained, sufficient instability might develop to support updrafts capable of isolating damaging wind gusts. This will be promoted by the inverted V boundary layers, which we talked about a couple of days ago, and the potential for southwesterly winds of 40 to 45 knots in that 1 to 2 kilometer layer to be transported to the surface within some of these thunderstorms. So what they're basically saying is that the strong winds aloft, the conditions would be supportive because of the way the boundary layer temperature profile is in the atmosphere. When you look at the atmosphere vertically, supporting instability and creating a situation where the strong winds aloft will mix down to the surface with these thunderstorms, which makes complete sense.
And I want to report that looking out the window, the sliding glass doors I have that's off to my left, it looks like the skies are brightening and clearing, Joe. You talked about that narrow sector of clearing, and certainly if the sun were to come out for even a short length of time ahead of this advancing cold front to help heat things up, we're not going to get Cape values, let's say, of 1,000 or something like that, but just warming it up a little bit with all that instability will certainly aid to producing again those showers and storms that we're waiting for.
They mentioned Cape values going to 300 to 500.
Right, which is very modest. I mean, if you're, like I said, if this were the summertime and we were waiting for some kind of a severe outbreak, they would look at that 3 to 500 and they'd almost like laugh. They say, it's no big deal. They're looking for the 1, the 2, the 3,000 values. But again, what little cape we do have, combined with this extremely vigorous, cold, unstable pool of air that's advancing toward us, rushing toward us, that is going to set the stage, we think, for some possible severe weather. By the way, Joe, I just took a look at the FOOS, the North American model FOOS values here, and for those of you who are into this, you'll understand this like Joe and I do. 2 o'clock this afternoon, the thickness is 542, and the T1 temperature, the T1 boundary temperature, is 11 Celsius. By tomorrow morning, less than 24 hours later, at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, the thickness falls to 517. Now
That's
that's crazy.
cold.
That's crazy. And the T1 drops on down to 0. I mean,
Right.
the bottom literally falls out of the thermometers at all levels here behind this sharp cold front. And then, by the way, there's a freeze warning that has been posted for a good part of our viewing area
Yes,
for.
let me put that up. We can show you got the freeze warning that's up. We also have wind advisories that are up after 5 o'clock.
Right.
That have gone up. But yeah, freeze because this is a fairly impressive shot of cold air that's coming down. So, and of course, the growing season has started. So the warnings in the areas where the growing season has started: southern New England, most of Long Island, the lower Hudson Valley, New Jersey, southern and southeastern Pennsylvania into Maryland and northwestern Virginia.
Even I, up here in Putnam Valley, now last week, a few days ago, when a lot of places had a freeze warning, we didn't have the freeze warning up here in Putnam Valley, even though we definitely dropped below freezing. But I made the assumption that we were not yet into the growing season up here. Now we're into this one, so I'm just going to make the assumption that our growing season officially began, let's say maybe yesterday, the 20th of April, and
Right.
that's why we're included now in this freeze warning for tonight, tomorrow. And when you
And,
combine those winds, Joe, I haven't even done a calculation of what the chill factor is going to be like later tonight or tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it's going to be cold, and the wind advisory, by the way, goes up at 5 o'clock, so it goes up behind the front from northeastern New Jersey to New York City, Long Island, the lower Hudson Valley, and then east across Connecticut, south of Route 84 into southeastern New England, on up to Boston. I'm going to bring up the regional radar, which is probably this radar view that the Weather Service has tends to run a little bit behind by about 15 or 20 minutes. And of course, if you're watching this later on this afternoon, please be advised that the radars are obviously dated. It's 12:47 Eastern time at the moment, so you want to make sure you got the latest weather information. Go to weather.gov. To your local National Weather Service forecast office, so this way you can stay on top of what's happening. But here's the prefrontal stuff is running across New Jersey now. It's probably going to get to me shortly here in central Long Island, but it's from this second area that I'm just drawing back here through northeastern Pennsylvania that goes southwest into western Maryland and West Virginia. That's the area that's going to gel up in terms of thunderstorm activity. And if you look at the HRRR for we're coming up on 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so this was at noon. So the HRRR's presentation of the radar starts to blow up fairly rapidly between 1 and 2 o'clock and at 3 o'clock. So you've got this snaking line of storms that it has from New Hampshire down through western Connecticut to New York City and into central and South Jersey. Some very strong cells, and of course, remember, the place when it comes to these thunderstorms and how when they're in their up phase, when they're starting from nothing and then developing into their to whatever's going to be their peak intensity, it's in that process that if those storms come over you, that's when they're at their worst. When they've already reached peak and they're starting to decay, they're not quite as bad. But when they're in that build-up phase, you can get some really weird stuff to happen. The line moves through very quickly here, so if by 1 o'clock, we're seeing the edge of that line in northeastern Pennsylvania, which is coming up on 1 o'clock. We're not quite there yet. Maybe the HRRR is a little bit too fast with this. But, say by between 1 and 2 o'clock, with that line approaching, that's when that buildup phase is going to start. And by the time we get to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that line is in eastern Long Island and in central Connecticut. So this thing's flying by. And then after that, it's on up into eastern New England and offshore. And of course, the gradient is fairly tight behind it. So this is why they've got that wind advisory up from New York City north and east.
And interesting, you mentioned about the HRRR, Joe. In making a comparison, I don't know if you noticed this, but the HRRR The 3 kilometer North American model, the
All right,
NAM.
I was just about to bring that up. So go ahead. I'm going to
All right,
bring up the 3 kilometer.
yeah, the 3 kilometer NAM, the HRRR, and the GFS all clearly show a well-defined narrow line of showers and storms moving through around 2 or 3 o'clock. The only one that does not show that, interestingly, is the 12 kilometer NAM. So I guess what is needed here is you have to focus or get the grid down a little tighter to pick up on this very narrow line of convection. But the 12 kilometer
Right.
line shows a big blotch of dark green, does not show the clear line of orange and red, which suggests the squall line. That
Also, the 3 kilometer is, the 3 kilometer is definitely slower than than the HRRR. The other thing I would point out about the 3 kilometer is if you look at its view of what the radar looks like, and then you look at the actual view of what the radar looks like at the moment, it just seems to me like the 3 kilometer and the HRRR to an extent look underdone at this point in terms of the
right,
coverage of precip.
right.
So, you know, these are models, and as I've often said, when it comes to severe weather, it's really just at this point you really just kind of have to look at the radar. You know what all the pieces of the puzzle are, so you just have to watch the radar and see how the cells develop. So we should begin to see a robust line start to develop after 1 o'clock out of that second area that's now moving into eastern Pennsylvania and also through south central PA and moving east.
Yes, now's the time. Really, we've been up until this point discussing how the models have handled this particular scenario coming up, but now is the time to go and do not future casting, but now casting. Now is the time to start watching the satellite loops and the radar for any kind of uptick in convective activity. And I had said yesterday and the last couple of days that I had thought that maybe the SPC, the Storm Prediction Center, would be looking at the soundings from this morning and maybe actually block out a part of our area one step upward from slight to maybe enhanced. They have not done that, I guess in part because of the initial shot of rain and showers taking away some of that moisture. But we
Right.
did see clearly on the radar, Joe, that you showed a few moments ago, that wedge, that narrow wedge of dry air between what's over us now and moving away and the next round of convective activity for the next hour or two. And again, that wedge may open up or widen just enough to allow for a bit of clearing, a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of warming, and that will perhaps set the stage for the more robust punch of convective activity in
Right.
2 to 3 o'clock hour.
I have the Upton radar. I'm going to take a swing around a few of the local radars here. So we've got the Upton radar showing there's actually a working special marine warning in lower New York Harbor and south of Brooklyn and Queens into the coastal waters that went up a little while ago. And it looks like there's some cells there. The radar echoes are elevated, moving through Brooklyn and Queens and into Nassau County, and also moving into New York City. And I could see even over you. You mentioned what you have some thunder or lightning up there, or both.
Just thunder.
Just thunder. Yeah, I could see from where that's coming from in terms of the local radar. The radar from Mount Holly, unfortunately, is down, but I'm going to try to see if I can get the Fort Dix radar. I'm sorry, not the Fort. The Fort Dix radar is down. The Dover, Delaware radar. Let's see if we can get that up. Yep, there it is. So this at least gives you sort of a wider view, and you've got some cells down. Okay, folks, sorry for the internet hit, but it happens. It took a little bit of a signal hit. Mr. Rayo, are you with us or not? Because we lost Joe. Let me see if I can bring him back up. Okay. Uh, let's get Joe Rayo back on the scene here. Sorry about that internet hit.
Hello.
Yeah, internet hit. So the Dover radar shows that spacing in between the lead area near the coast, and then the area that's going to bubble up later on. This is again, Mount Holly is down. Let's go to Pittsburgh. You can see some of this stuff that's going on behind it back in Western PA. And I think we could get to South Central PA. We'll go to State College's radar here. By the way, again, it's coming up on 1 o'clock Eastern time. So what you're seeing here is dated. If you're watching this later, be sure to get your check out the latest radars and any watches or warnings by going to weather.gov. So just really fast, Joe, because I think we'll probably cover it more in terms of where we're going with this in the longer range. I'm going to bring up the GFS really quick. I haven't looked at it, so we'll just kind of look at it together here. The overall theme, the way I described it here in terms of the overall weather pattern, is that it really kind of looks pretty ugly for the next week, where the amount of sunshine and dry time is going to be limited. So take advantage of tomorrow, which will probably start out breezy or even windy in the morning, and then the winds will try to ease later in the day. As a high moves off the southeast coast, you've got another high building down from Canada. So here comes the first low with some rain moving in during Thursday. And that low looks like it's going to take a track straight east across southern Ohio, southern New Jersey, and passing south of Long Island. So that's going to keep things soupy into Friday. Then we get a bit of a break. But by Saturday afternoon, there's another low in northeastern Kentucky with rain on our doorstep Saturday afternoon across Pennsylvania to New York City, and raining everywhere by evening. And then that low takes a similar track off the Jersey coast south of Long Island, which means that we've got lingering, we're going to have precip and lingering clouds and an onshore wind on Sunday. And then it improves for Monday into Tuesday before the next weather system comes in for next Wednesday. So very, very busy weather pattern ahead after we deal with whatever we deal with during this for this afternoon. Not looking promising.
It's like the storms are on a conveyor belt, and I know all of you snow lovers, you snow weenies out there, are probably saying to yourself, "Why couldn't this happen in January or February when the temperatures were, 10 or 15 degrees colder? Because then we'd have one storm after another, and we'd be out there with the snow shovels and snow plows on an endless period." But it was, we were talking about this all winter long, that the pattern eventually is going to break down. I kept saying, "You watch, it's going to break down by the time we get to April," and sure enough, here it is. And it looks like now, Joe, the not only are we going to have a stormy weather regime, but it also looks like we're going to be seeing temperatures at or below normal, probably through the end of the month, and maybe right on into the uh, month of May. I can't
Yep,
believe May.
that we are. Len, I know. Len says NWS Mount Holly, just probably with a statement. Strong thunderstorms along a line from Bally to Honeybrook. I have no idea where those little towns are. To near Shanks Ferry. Moving, but what stands out about this, moving east at 70 miles an hour. 70 miles an hour. You
I mean,
you think there might be a little a little momentum behind all of this?
oh my, I thought to myself yesterday, I said, 50, should I say 50 miles an hour? Is that going a
I
little
know
over
it's not a number you like to throw
70
around.
miles an hour?
70 miles an hour.
God.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in the next couple of hours. So from this point on, folks, just keep an eye on the radar and just watch for those watches and warnings. If the watch comes out, I don't know that it will, but there probably will be a few severe thunderstorm warnings running around. Um, do does the radar not pick up the line as easily due to the low-level atmospheric convection? Well, I think it picks up the line. I think where we lose it is, in a sense, if you're looking at the radar and you're thinking, okay, well, if this was a really severe line, I should be seeing those, those dark reds and those purples
Right.
showing up. But instead, you're seeing the yellows and maybe you get some orange and a little bit of red in there. It's a little deceptive. It still doesn't take away from the fact that you're dealing with a fast-moving front and the upper trough that's driving all of this, and the stronger winds at the mid levels of the atmosphere mixing down to the surface. That really is where the big player is. That these thunderstorms will help bring down those strong winds aloft, and you start to get those those downbursts of wind that could be running at 50 or 60 miles an hour.
I'm wondering whoever is operating the radar, let's say at Upton at the National Weather Service site in New York, or well, Mount Holly. Is it Mount Holly that's down now, or
Mount Holly is down.
is down? The various sites. I mean, for DBZ or the intensities and the colors that appear on the radar, they move that radar to check out or to
Right,
sample.
they're playing with it.
Yeah, so it's and again, this is not your 40 and 50,000 foot thunderheads. This is low top convection, and so but still it's intense enough so that you should be able to see it quite readily. If not in those deep shades of red, then as you mentioned, the oranges and yellows on the color radar screen.
By the way, SPC on their discussion mentioned the 40% chance of them putting up a watch. Again, at this point, we know what we're looking at. So, I think we're pretty well aware that we've got severe thunderstorms that will be coming through. So whether they put the watch or not, because I know a lot of the weather fans and the weather weenies out there get very, they get very worked up over the technicals about whether are they putting up a watch, are they not putting up a watch. Kind of at this stage, here we are at 1 o'clock in the afternoon waiting for these storms to develop, that it doesn't matter. We know they're coming. We'll see how the radars shape up. We'll see what turns out. Some of you will probably some places are going to get rougher weather than other places will. That's just how it works out when it comes to these convective events. So it will be whatever it will be.
Right.
Okay, so we'll wrap it up here, and because Joe and I need to save our energy for our live stream tonight at our usual time at 7 o'clock Eastern. Thanks for those of you that a nice crowd early this afternoon. I'd say you're probably watching this from work, but I'm thinking that most of you aren't. So given the situation, so the thunderstorms will at least force you to stay indoors today. So we'll see you later. Stay safe. See you at 7 o'clock Eastern time.
7 o'clock with the post mortem.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And the look ahead to the miserable weather pattern that we're going to be in.
Right.
Bye, everybody.